Welcome to our weekly podcast, Good Enough, with your co-hosts, Sam Lewis and Mark Lips. Our goal on Good Enough is to interview guests who do not let being perfect keep them from achieving their dreams. Whether it be writing a book, growing a business, achieving some other success, all of these people are heartfelt, passionate, and good enough to be noticed and guests on our podcast. We welcome them, and we also thank you for joining us today.
Good enough as good enough.
Hey, Mark, how are you?
I am doing great. I'm
Hey,
sorry.
you were late.
I'm trying to find a place to get out of the sun. There we go. There we go.
That's
yeah.
Hey, I
Well-
hired a new podcast technician.
Yeah, I see that. I
You
see
gotta
that.
tell Julian, because our listeners aren't going to know.
The last one he paid $55 an hour. What are you making?
Hey, Mark, stop that.
Uh.
We talked about that.
Sorry. I just.
What kind of friend are you?
Yeah.
Julian helped me with this microphone today. Explained a few.
Yeah. Well,
There's
fly on
only
out
three
here
buttons
and help
on it.
me
You think I can figure it out, but
yeah, don't mess with. It's working. It's working. So
Julian does have a background in audio.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I'm not joking.
And he hasn't said a word.
That's the best kind of guy with a background in audio.
Yeah. So anyway, we're gonna have to get over to Paul.
Yeah, we are.
But
man, I hope you got this covered, because I downloaded the book on Kindle, and it's actually like a scanned copy of the book. It's not a real Kindle.
Well, we can ask him about that.
Yeah, and I am going to read this book, but I haven't got to it yet. I feel terrible, but it sounds like
it's tough. It's tough. But on Kindle, but you know, anyway, welcome listeners. It's Good Enough. I'm your host, one of your hosts, co-hosts, Mark Lips, and my buddy over here,
Sam Lewis.
And I, sorry I'm late, but Sammy, I went to the other podcast link, and I'm going, how come Sam's not picking up? And then I looked up and it said 2:00 start. Okay, yeah. Okay, so anyway, and Paul's right in your wheelhouse, by the way. He's got a couple of books that he's written. He was a corporate trainer,
Cool.
Leadership workshops. He started Leadership Manhattan. He's in my Rotary. He was in my Rotary Club down there. But he went. What was the book? How to making your garden grow or something. And that's all about leadership and and all of that. And he's worked with major companies all over. So he's got a great background in that. So.
Hey, have we got any sponsors for this thing?
Yeah. We got the Right Choice Farm, Stay, and Catering, as well as Happy Friday Neighbors newsletter, which comes out for the last 25 years, every Friday at 4 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. Send me your email, listeners. Send me your email, and I'll put you on there. And you can send me stuff to put on there.
Well, on this side of the country, we're sponsored by Pride Staff, a full service staffing agency, temp to hire, direct hire, and headhunting recruiting. We're also sponsored by the PPP, the Finally Friday Philosophy, comes out every Friday. It's a little more esoteric newsletter than Mark's. And we have a special edition coming out for St. Patty's Day this Friday. It may be one of the best ones I ever put together. I'm excited about it. So send Mark and I both your emails. We'd love to have you on our list.
And my newsletter, Sam's newsletter, it's a college graduate. My newsletter is, hey, you want to hear a joke? Hey.
I got jokes.
Yeah, I know. You plagiarized them.
I plagiarize, I steal, I copy, I paste.
yeah.
They,
Well, we've always said
do you
nothing
realize that in the not too distant future, when you say to kids copy and paste,
go.
they won't have a concept of what paste means.
Well,
Mark and I used to eat paste.
well, they won't. They won't. Yeah, paste is one of those smells that brings back memories. If you smell
Oh,
paste
yes.
or
Oh, my.
Play-Doh, stuff like that.
Play-Doh
Um,
paste.
but
Vomit.
no,
Vomit in the
this is
hallway.
where once again, AI will rear its ugly head, and people won't have to cut and paste. They'll say, AI, write me another term paper on that. I just redo that third page. If you could just redo that, and then I'll let me know when you're done. I'll come over and proof it.
Hey, Paul's waiting on us. So
Yeah, I know he is. Okay.
I'll see you on the other side.
Bye.
Mark, should I hit record this time?
Yeah. Hey, did you hit record?
Even my staff, when I walked in just now, said, "Hey, don't forget to hit record." Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Hey, listeners, we had to. This is a do-over. We're going to use the same intro, but I forgot to hit record last time. We got Paul in the wings right now. You ready, Mark?
I'm ready, baby.
All right, let's bring Paul in.
Questions. Looking for my questions. There they are. Man, I got to tell you,
how was Rotary?
I finally, Rotary's great. I finally finished the book. And guys, you're going to hear about this book, The Journey, from Paul Allman, who wrote it. And I got to tell you, sorry, Paul, we started without you. Paul, have you got your sound on?
You're muted, Paul.
Muted.
Maybe you should be on that old Apple computer back there.
Yeah.
We still can't hear you.
Can't hear you. Look at that. All right. Well, anyway, while he's getting that figured out, listeners, this book, The Journey, written by Paul Allman, who has been a corporate trainer, leader for tech companies and entertainment companies, and you name it. He's been there. Still can't hear you.
I haven't said anything. Can you hear me?
Now we can hear him. But I got to tell you, Paul, I finished it.
Oh my God, you have such tenacity and determination.
Okay, so here's the thing, listeners. You got this book. You got to stick with it, and then once you've stuck with it, you will be sucked in, and you will be on the journey with Ulster. And if you pitch this as a movie, which it should be. Even that ending was,
good.
If you got to get them to at least get to Ethiopia, okay?
There you go. That's it.
Once you get to Ethiopia, you're off and running.
I figure that's about page 10, chapter about 10, and then it's a page turner. When you get when you're chasing that, getting out of Ethiopia and driving to find Addis and all that. And then I wrote 3 endings for that book.
Yeah.
Okay?
Well, I thought there was only one ending.
Well, the one ending was
you have.
Yeah, well, the one ending was the ending of, and I won't be a spoiler alert, but was chapter 24. That was the ending right there.
Where you were going to end it. It's where you were going to end it.
Yeah.
In your journey.
And then I wrote 2 more endings. One was a Hollywood, one wasn't a Hollywood ending. And my editor looked at it. She goes, do them both.
Yeah.
So that's why it all merged together.
Before we get too deep in the woods here, I got to tell these guys, listen, listeners, this is called The Journey. And this is basically a memoir, even though the lead character's name is not Paul Allman. And that's because we don't want to get people in trouble. Want to know that Paul was not the promiscuous one. It was Ulster who was the promiscuous one, who slept with every girl from Sweden to Ethiopia and back.
Oh
So,
my God, Mark! Thank God you didn't use his name.
yeah.
No,
Thank
thank
God you
goodness it's
didn't
not
make
about
any
me.
illusions
No,
whatsoever.
no. I'm sorry. Listen, that's why this book is such a great book. There is history, there is romance, there is intrigue, there is cinematography. It comes off
Yeah.
the page.
I agree.
There is action. There's thrilling moments. I mean, sphincter moments. I don't know how. I gotta believe. So listen. So okay. So this was your cathartic moment, 1976. Take it from there.
So you're absolutely right. And I sat on this story for almost 4 years. I would be at dinner parties, kind of go through it with the people there, and they go, "You got to be kidding me. You haven't written this down."
Yeah.
So finally I decided to write it. And I went through some struggles with it, because how was I going to write as honestly as I did in these journals I kept? And then I decided, what does it matter? This is an age. This was a discovery novel about somebody coming of age. And it's okay to go through some of the journeys I went through. I found about halfway through, I was taking my original journals, which if you go to the book, you'll see it. Like, that's an original journal page. That's my writing. It's about the size of the lettering on a penny.
And you gotta know, listeners. I mean, if any of you have backpacked, you know why he's writing that way. Not only that, but so that it's only for his eyes.
Exactly right. So it kept it
size and your eyes only, unless you choose otherwise.
And what really promoted this the most, I felt like people don't know about what went on in Ethiopia. And Mark and I have been a member of a group, and I got up and did what's called a craft talk, where I talked about this journey. The president came up to me, this is years before you were part of the club, and said, "You got pictures to back that up? You got photos that say you really did all that?" And so I did the thing again as part of the meeting, a speaker. And ever since then, people have said, you need to provide that in a source. Others could learn from it. And so that's what I did.
Yeah. So this listener, this is Paul in his 20s, who was working in Europe, working in Sweden for the summer, and decided to start traveling. He had spent basically 7 years overseas, away from the state. And but you decided you had to go see these churches in Ethiopia. You had to go see these landmarks, and you took off, and it is just a ride from there. And it just happens, if anybody remembers the late 70s, that was a very volatile period.
I don't remember any of them. Any of it.
there's medication for that.
Ethiopia.
And I was with Mark for part of it.
Tail end of that was Pol Pot, the tail end of Vietnam.
Yeah, that's right. I forgot about that.
Well, Mark, to piggyback on that, I originally went for like a 3-month vacation to Europe to see what I'd studied in college. And all of a sudden, I found myself in Ethiopia. And it looks like I lost my signal. Is that right?
No, you're fine.
You're still good.
Okay. So I found myself, actually, first, I would work my summer job in Sweden. When it got cold, I went over the Alps. I called winter out, and then came back in May and started the summer job again. And I'd spent the winter one time in Morocco, one time all through Spain, and this time I was in Greece. So the caves of Matala, were made famous by Joni Mitchell, who stayed there for a while. Her cave was 3 up from mine. Sitting outside around a fireplace, and this couple had just come out of Africa, and I'm puffing up my chest. Hey, I'm going to go down, and I'm going to see the pyramids, maybe even climb the pyramids outside of Cairo and Giza. And the woman in that group goes, okay, they're cool. They're humbling, but they pale in comparison to the churches of Lalibela in the Gondor region of Northern Ethiopia. And I go, what? I came up with then the idea, since I had time, to travel up the Nile River by myself, cross the Nubian Desert into Sudan. I had challenges getting into Ethiopia. Finally got there. I was in Addis Ababa. They had the coup. Mengistu took over. And then the rest of the book is me escaping out of Ethiopia into Kenya.
All right. So
there's so many amazing things in that little, four caves down from Joni Mitchell to start with. I mean, Joni Mitchell, a legend and a national treasure who finally got some of her honor due in the last year. But
man, you're absolutely right. And nobody knew, Sam. Nobody knew about really the caves of Matala at that time. This is early 70s, somewhat the end of the 60s that was happening, but they heard about it from other travelers who they trusted. They shared it. So here's who was at Matala in the early 70s: Cat Stevens, Bob Dylan, Joni Mitchell. Because they went there, it had probably a maximum 75 people live there. These old caves that had sarcophagi places for them. My cave had graffiti from the 2nd century BC. And so what was amazing to me was just to be there. And then from there, everything unfolded. And Mark, you've read it. I think you have too, Sam, as well. But the first third of the book, maybe, and this spoiler alert for the listeners, was me trying to get to the churches of Lalibela. Mm-hmm. And you'll find out when you read the book what happened in that whole exchange. Afterwards, I needed another goal, and it became the character Addis, who now I chase through southern Ethiopia, Kenya, back to Sweden, where the story ends.
Yeah, and I like Addis too, so I have started to look for her. I got to tell you, she's great. But listeners, I got to tell you, what you have to do is you have to read this book, and you have to have one of these, because there are so many insights, so many what you say quotes, but how do you put it? Realizations, by
observations.
Observations. The people that you like at the caves, you guys would sit at night, guitars and around a campfire or whatever, and the things people would talk about, because what was so cool about that time is people were trying to discover themselves. We were at the tail end of a lot of stuff, Vietnam era, the causes. I remember me personally, I wanted a cause. It seemed like my only cause was try to pay off my credit card. I was looking for a cause, and I wish I'd thought about, instead I traveled US, but I wish I'd thought about doing something like that. But for instance, one quote that I copied down is, you can't shake hands with a clenched fist.
Oh yeah, gold in my ear.
Mm-hmm. Can't shake hands with a clenched fist. And they're all through this book. Not just ones that famous people have said, but ones that friends of yours that you met along the journey said, was stuff that you noticed. And the other thing I noticed, now, Paul, jump in here anytime, Sam. It seemed like you, in all your groups, you met these forces in all your groups traveling. They were all kind of in the same sort of stream of consciousness, but you seem to be a facilitator more than anything, which is strange, which is interesting, because that's what you ended up doing.
Right. I think that I think that was driven by innate curiosity. And I do that a lot. When I'm around somebody who exposes themselves as being very interesting, my intuition kicks in and I go, I want to know more. How about this? How about that? And I am, in essence, facilitating our conversation. And the one thing that I got out of rewriting my journals and making a story out of it was that whole journey was about becoming more aware of what's around me. And that awareness led to trusting my instincts better. And I think there's a quote also real close to the gold in my ear quote in the book that talks about somebody who is now becoming aware of themselves. There was a Russian proverb that says, a man who's unaware walks through a forest and sees no firewood.
Mhm.
Stuff is all around us.
Yeah.
It's,
Yeah.
do we see it in the context, and how we see it changes the awareness within ourselves.
By the way, in your, this was, and I don't mean no offense, but in your book where you mention all these countries and all these languages and all these sayings, and you do it in their language or whatever,
Yeah.
it looked like the alphabet on a drum.
What? I missed that. What'd you say?
It looks like the alphabet on a drunk when you get in these countries with the way they spell their words and all of this stuff. I can't even pronounce them the way when they're written in front of me. It's but anyway, what I thought was really here. I have so many, and we're going to run out of time.
Okay.
First of all, when you got rejected from hotels, you didn't really go into that, but I can imagine what it was. But when you would go into these towns and get these dirty looks, and because you are this infidel coming in, and it's a volatile region. I mean, Sammy, he would turn a corner and there would be bodies decapitated, arms cut off, things like that, just in a pile. But many times he would go into a youth hostel and they wouldn't take him, or they'd go into a hotel and they said they would reject him. Why were they rejecting him?
Well, you're right. And it wasn't, I don't think it was ever a youth hostel in Africa because everything was so cheap. But
Right.
when I went into a low priced hotel, I think they were a little cautious of who I was. Remember in Kassala, and right on the way to Kassala in the middle of the Sahara Desert, they probably saw a white person, a young white person, who knows, maybe once a year.
Well,
And here
this is racism I don't know if it's racism, but if that would be the proper term, but
it is
racism against you.
Well, it was a bias. Clearly, I don't know if racism, but you could probably throw that spin to it, but it's more like I was the unusual, and always the unusual you can have a bias against. And where I saw that, it wasn't a negative bias. Let me explain. I got on the bus that was going to do the final leg to Kassala. And I started, there's some seats in the back of the bus. And I started to walk to the back of the bus. A guy got up and says, no, you can't sit there. You have to go up front and sit by the best seats by the driver.
Caste system. Okay. Yeah.
This is for us who probably has never experienced or will experience where you come from. This is for us. You go up there where the elite get to sit. And it kind of hit me in reverse. Suppose it would have been a negative spin to that. I had a positive spin. But when I got to Kassala looking for a hotel, and I got rejected a lot of times because I'm sure the person behind the desk was going, if I let this person in, there could be all kinds of trouble.
Right.
I would be walking down the street. I don't know if you guys, Sam, have a Midwestern background, but if you ever go out into a field of cattle and you walk, they'll walk right with you. You stop, they stop. Yeah. You walk, they walk. I mean, it's like you're not doing anything. You stop, they stop. Same thing when I was walking on the streets in Kassala. A gang of young kids and some adults would follow me at a safe distance. I would stop, they'd stop and stare. I look around and they look, and I start walking. They start walking with me.
Paul, that happens to me at Walmart.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it used to for me with the blue light specials, but that was a whole different store. But and I think the thing, Mark, you hit the nail on the head is whenever you find yourself an out of place context, there are people that are going to look at you in the wrong light. Some look at you and feel sorry for you, but the majority of the people automatically put up a blinder going, caution, caution, this could be trouble. And that happened to me so many times.
It would have been just like Nazi Germany.
Could have been. Yeah, exactly. And
You take a Jewish person into your
Oh.
house, you're taking a risk, huge risk.
exactly.
I took a group
Well
of
said.
high schoolers on a World War II themed trip through Europe, and a lot of the camps and Salzburg, all these places.
Oof.
And a guy who was in the camp was our tour guide.
Oof.
2 weeks.
Oh my God.
From Amsterdam. And the way he's a Christian though, but the way he ended up in the camp was him and his parents would rescue Jews and try to find homes to house the Jews. And he was going through a checkpoint, and he got through the checkpoint, and these fake IDs fell out of his sock.
Oh, jeez.
And the Germans came over and got him. Anne Frank's family gave him a page out of her diary, by the way.
Oh my God.
And
Wow.
but anyway, Core I said, golly, I can't believe it. But asking someone to take it, and he wouldn't do it. And he goes, listen, Mark, would you do it?
Yeah.
Think about it. Someone comes up to you and says, will you hide these people in the crawl space of your roof? I'm not sure how long, with the understanding that if you're caught, your whole family is killed or sent to the camps.
You know, that honest sensitivity to others and that sort of moral compass that might even be lacking a little around us now is, I think, was invaluable at that time in history. And there are people alive today or could live to tell the story, and therefore society benefited from people taking that risk. And that, you know, some people have asked me, Mark, so why didn't you just fly to get out of the area? First of all, I was a student, didn't have much money.
Ask you this too. I was going to mention this.
Yeah, and I was really into traveling, but taking that risk opened myself up to myself, unlike I could have done any other way. And I think those people you just mentioned who took that risk learned more about who they were and the value of their contribution to society.
Core's message that he was saying we never held it against them.
No. Yeah.
Because it was their lives. They had to make those decisions.
That's a well said. Yeah. And unlike certain circumstances that I disagree with, maybe I would hold it against them for not stepping up to that personal risk. That boundary they needed to go over. But you're right. I love the concept of those who went through that those trials and tribulations have been blessed with such deep forgiveness.
Remember the hotel that you popped in looking for your friends, and they were trying to get you out of there, and they said, listen, stay here. You need to move. You need to get out of here. He's looking around. He's going, please do not. In fact, go out the back. You know, you can't. You know, and then the police showed up, and you know, what are you doing here? Why are you here? And that's where well,
part of that was another underlining story that pops up to when I got the river on the dried up riverbed. Once I left Addis Ababa, there just wasn't much civilization. I think I went maybe 600 miles without a bank, any place you could even go cash money. And by the way, then I did a lot of stuff on barter. If I had a fountain pen, I could get a lot with a fountain pen, or eventually
you made rings, and
that was that was after I was robbed down in Nairobi. But the interesting part was, as I was going down through those areas, I wasn't really worried about the risk anymore. For example, the prevailing story was just about everybody who approached me with confidence, I go, there's an underlying story about ready to happen. They're doing that because they want something from me or out of me.
Yeah.
And so I was in that one hotel. And as I would go to these hotels, I had these two kids from the bus who were following me. And I would go into a hotel, they kicked me out or didn't accept me. I came out after I had finally said, okay, they saw me pay the money. And as I came out, they go, okay, that's $1.
Right.
What for? Because we showed you around the town. No, you didn't. You followed me. We followed. And so guess what? They started complaining. A crowd forms around me. Of course, they're speaking Amharic. I don't. All of a sudden, everybody's looking at me like, here's this guy.
You're the bad guy.
Who abused these poor little kids. And I'm there going, and then the police show up. And I go, okay, there's no good outcome for me in this whole thing. This elderly gentleman runs up, says something to the police in Amharic, says something to me. I apologize. I apologize for my countrymen. And he says something to the kids, get away, and they leave. And then he goes, I go, well, thank you so much. And he goes, yes, I would like to complete this story with you if you take me for dinner. All right. If you know a good restaurant. We go to a restaurant and the prices were outrageous. Obviously,
Yeah, he was one vulture replacing another.
Well, that's right. And then he goes to say, by the way, I'm related to Haile Selassie. Several hundred of my family were killed. The only way I can get out of this country is to have an American who sponsors me. Is there any way you could help me do this? And I go, oh my God, I left one vulture to set it up.
Right.
He said, I need a little bit of money. And I can never forget this saying. He goes, because I kept saying no. And he finally goes, okay, can you at least give me $1? Because I talk so much, I need a beer. Yeah. I go, oh my God.
I use that line all the time.
Yeah. I go, get out of here. I don't want to see you. Yeah, later that evening on reflection, I go, look, he did save me from those kids and the police. Maybe I was a little angry or just over suspect of these kind of people. So I'm going to look for him the next day when I get on the bus. And I'm there walking. I see him in the distance. Those two little kids run up to him.
Oh.
Oliver.
He had those kids, Oliver. He had them out looking for people. He would have them put me in a situation that he would have to save me from.
Right.
I have throughout the book, Mark, probably 20 examples all through Addis Ababa, people coming up with friendness and support. And one person said, I want to apologize for my countrymen. Well, what's the matter? Look at your leg. Somebody had spit on my leg. And he goes, I am so apologetic. So he grabs my pant leg and he's shaking it really hard, trying to scrape this off. Well, I'm losing my balance. I reach back. There's a hand on my wallet. Yeah. I turn around and look, and it's his buddy running this way. And then I turn back to him and he's taken off. Yeah. He had spit on my leg, set me up. Yeah. Throughout the whole journey, there were these people. Well, like you said earlier, why did they kick me out or not accept me in a hotel? I stood out like a sore thumb. And that's the same thing walking down the street. You could see me coming a mile away going, there's a guy we want to target.
You know, I know of Addis Ababa, but the only reason I think I know of because I read Lawrence of Arabia's.
Oh,
he had something to do with during World War II or something with Addis Ababa, or am I making that up?
I think there might have been, I don't think he went down that far, even though he was in the Sahara Desert, but he certainly would have met a lot of people from that area, from Ethiopia, that had come up. Ethiopia is a very unique culture because it's surrounded by these incredible mountains. And then on the bottom, it's the jungle and parts of the Sahara creeping down, very isolated. Throughout history, a very isolated culture. But I found this research interesting. The Greeks finally got down there. Some of the old historians in the 2nd, 3rd century wrote about the people from Ethiopia. Ethio means burned. Pia means face. People from Ethiopia are the burned face people.
Wow.
Because of their coloring.
Yeah.
You know what I like? Also, here's a general comment that you made, which listeners, I love this, is that the difference between taking a bus or a train, backpacking versus flying. Yeah. One is traveling and the other sends you there.
Yeah, that was
a great analogy. Great analogy of why you chose, in many cases, rather than fly, I want to go by bus, I want to go by train or back, because you're traveling.
And you're experiencing everything that goes with that culture. How many of you have been riding, for example, in a car and somebody else is driving and you doze off? And then they say, wow, we passed some really cool stuff. And you go, I was just tired. I fell asleep. When you're traveling and on the land and you have things to keep you awake, you're seeing each rut, you're seeing each hill, you're seeing each group of people along the way, and it sticks with you so much more.
I think
that does remind me of my grandfather died peacefully in his sleep with some kind of heart ailment, but the other three people in the car were screaming their ass off.
Yeah, it could happen.
Sorry, Mark.
Yeah. Okay. Hey,
Speaking of falling asleep in a car.
The other
that was a permanent sleep.
The other one of the other interesting things was, and this is what we our founding fathers said to do this, and we somehow cannot keep it that way. And that is separation of church and state.
Yep.
And that's probably the biggest issue they have over there is they're not separating church and state.
Well, it's happening somewhat indirectly in our country right now.
I think it's very directly.
Yeah, you have politics driven by some ideological philosophy. I can't hold you at fault for how you want to believe. I can hold you at fault at putting others who don't believe that way under a political system that changes stuff. Right. And you're absolutely right. That was the argument. What he's talking about, Sam, is I was put under house arrest 20 miles from the border, escaping Ethiopia. And I have a lieutenant colonel with two guys with rifles pointed at me, interviewing me. And he was just waiting.
Buddy, that close.
Yeah, he was. And basically he was saying, what are you here for? And do you represent America? America was changing its alliance from Ethiopia to Somalia. Somalia was realigning with America and getting rid of Russia. And when Mengistu took over, his sole focus from Moscow was get rid of all the CIA that's in your country that you don't know about. If they're suspect, just shoot them. And this convoy that came out of Addis Ababa that put me under house arrest 20 miles from the border, his role was to come down and look for people who didn't belong there. I'm young, white, American. I fit every criteria that he had to tick off, and his role was to shoot me. We got into a deep discussion about philosophy, and he asked me a question I'll never forget. Paul, because we found out this background. He had studied philosophy in England, and I had a sub minor of that in college. He goes, so what do you think of the Twilights of the Idyll by Nietzsche? I'm looking around me. This is like in on the savannah, just before the jungle starts in Africa with nobody. And so we got into this discussion of social contract and some of the Rousseau and Locke and other those ideas of how a change in government requires you to really take a firm control of a country, kill people, shoot them, let them know you're in charge. And so when I was saying, but what's going on in Ethiopia right now, he was saying, forget religion. We have to come and just become a dominant force. So another key line in the bookmark, I don't know if you remember this, is democracy is the luxury of authoritarianism. Mm-hmm. What do you mean that? For two people to play together in the sandbox, they need some parent or some figure. Hey, nope, that's his truck. Don't mess with that. You need some obvious force behind that says you guys will play together. Well, America has had 250 years of a system that is the force, even though that system is trying to be unraveled in some ways, but a system that makes people play together because they respect it so much. And that became my conclusion. Why can't you export democracy to a third world country? And you say you overthrow the dictator and you put, okay, now we're going to have democracy.
Well, we've tried
thousands of times. And that only lasts as long as that authority, i.e. America, is there. What happens when we leave?
Yeah. I mean, we've seen it in recent times. 1990
it doesn't work.
Forward, Iran and Iraq.
Everything. Because the authoritarianism that the country needed to believe in no longer makes people play by the same rules. Sam, does this all sound familiar with what might be going on in?
What era you're talking about? You talking about last week or what?
Yeah, exactly. It's a
That's
shame.
how I feel. I mean, you can't frame it any better in my book of what's happening right now. But
yeah,
here's a question for you, Paul. Do you think capitalism is just a regulated anarchy, an organized anarchy? I mean, money plays such a huge role in the New York Times had an article today about these politicians. It's whoever has the most money to spend.
Anarchy in the sense of government control, absolutely. Adam Smith, Wealth of Nations, talked about any group of people allowed to have a truly capitalistic group will only flourish. And what happens when there's greed? Well, you have to have some boundaries put in there. But that means the less government controlling and allowing a free market trade to take over, the more successful society will be. So it's anarchy in the sense of imposed rules. It's allowing a marketplace to control it. Well, when he wrote that, which was one of the leading documents that created our independence, it didn't really come into the idea what happens when you have an internet where people can do false news, or what happens when you can have somebody create a monopoly and control the whole free market isn't free and that kind of stuff. So other things had to evolve. I think the idea of anarchy in my mind, though, truly is this. When there is a rule of order, there are some people dissatisfied with that and want to tear it down. They really don't know what's going to be to replace it.
Sam, how much time?
We got 3 minutes.
Oh, good. So listen.
Don't do it, Mark. Don't. Please.
I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it. I know he didn't use AI. This is Paul. This is his writing. This is
absolutely.
All right.
But okay, love of your life at that time. Mine too. Now, what happened to Addis?
Well, there's several characters in there. I still have contact with most of them.
Really, Marianne?
Yeah, I know Marianne studied architecture in Umeå, northern Sweden, but I would never say that. I hope she'll never see this podcast because I allude to those people as being.
I think you're safe, Paul. I think you're safe.
Yeah, you might be safe, Paul, but I'm going to find her. Hey, what about Jenny?
Jenny, I lost complete track with. She was such an impulsive, overly ambitious woman. I assume either she was successful or she drank herself to death. And I'm probably leaning on the latter.
Yeah, because she kicked you out. Right. What about, because you said you drink a lot. Well,
I did. There's a line I have to share. I know we got a little bit of time, so I'll share it quickly. There's a line there, 6:30 in the morning, and I finally wake up and she goes, if you had a real job, you wouldn't sleep this
time. Right. Oh.
Hey, we got to take a picture before we run out of time. Forget.
All right.
So we're going to smile at the camera like it's actual camera. 1, 2, 3. All right. Thank you.
So Addis?
Yes. We have had limited contact last time about a year and a half ago.
Oh.
Because we both agree. She actually came back. This is getting ahead of the story. And even I have a sequel, which will then establish all this. After I got my degree, my master's degree in Sweden, I came back to America. She came with me. So we were together almost 8 years.
No kidding.
Yeah. And then she went back, got a career path. Mine had already started. And we both agreed there's just too much connectiveness there. We can't do this at a distance. Let's just see if we can not see each other. It's best. And that's the way it's been for almost, I didn't see her for almost.
Hey, we got less than a minute. And I just want to say, Paul, I apologize for not hitting, or Mark does apologize for not hitting record button.
That's okay. I look forward to doing this.
This was a good one. This was a good one. And we just appreciate you, and Paul. And thank you for coming back.
Ollie.
And,
let's do this every 2 weeks.
Yeah, I got to tell you, though, dude, before we get off here, you got to go talk to somebody at Manhattan Beach Rotary. There's got to be a connection where you can go in and just talk about Ethiopia and getting out of Ethiopia and the relationships and the close calls.
Bye-bye,
All right.
Paul. Thank you.
You guys, thanks.
Bye-bye.
Love you, brother.
Okay.
Good. 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 Enough. As good enough.